guitar chords, and what do the numbers mean? I've decided to answer this question in a video form because I've been asked the question several times in the comments, and there's no way of really answering it in a text form without writing a near essay, and I'm not going to do that. So here's the explanation. And bear in mind this applies to all instruments, whatever you play, banjo, ukulele, keyboards, whatever, the same theory applies. And whilst this video explains what the numbers are, because that's fairly easy, if you really want to apply it to the guitar, you'll need to study some extra lessons, and I'll put the links to those down below in the description. I'll also put this video in a playlist called Chord Theory, so if you watch the playlist in order, it should make complete sense. Firstly then, the very easy, simplified answer. The easy answer then is that the number refers to a note in the scale with the same name as the chord. So, for example, if you're using the chord of D major, you have to use the scale of D major. Or if you're using the chord of A minor, you'd have to use the scale of A minor. And this is why it's important to know your scales as well as your chords. Right, let's go through this in a little more depth. And in order to make it easier to understand, I'll demonstrate how three chords were formed. Let's take a look at the D chords, D sus2 and D sus4. Right then, if I take a D major chord, in order to make it a D sus2, I have to play the second note of the D major scale, which, as you can see here, it's an E. So to introduce the E into the D major chord, I remove the finger on the second fret of the top E string. So when I strum the chord, the E string is ringing. And this then is the D sus2. Okay, let's take a look at the D sus4. And in the same way as the previous example, we start with a D major, and then this time we add the fourth note of the D major scale, which is a D, E, F sharp, G. Now, the easiest way to introduce the G to the D major chord is to add the fourth finger onto the third fret of the top E string, so that you're playing a G instead of the F sharp, and there you have the D sus4. Hopefully you've noticed that the second finger in the second fret of the top E string is no longer needed, so you can remove this if you want. However, it's quite common to see the chord going between the D and the D sus4, in which case it's probably best to leave it in place. Right, let's do another example, and this time we'll look at a C add 9. And we'll start the same way with the C major chord and the C major scale. But this time you'll notice that the scale stops on the 8th note, because that's one complete octave. So to go beyond the 8th note, what we actually do is go up to the 7th note and start again. So you'd go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, blah, 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 and so on. So for this example, I've taken the scale up to the 11th note. However, we only need to go up to the 9th note, as we're creating a C add 9. And the 9th note of the C major scale is a D. So we need to find a way to add the D to the C major chord in order to make it a C add 9. And the easiest way to add the D to the C major chord is to play the 3rd fret on the B string with the 4th finger. And again, in a similar way to the D shape, you'll notice that if you're playing just this chord, you can remove the 1st finger from the 1st fret of the B string, because it's no longer being played. And actually, this means you could even refinger the chord in a different manner if you prefer. However, if you're going back to the C, it's probably easiest to leave the first finger in place. Now, if you've been trying to follow along with these examples and you don't know anything about the scales or the names of the notes on the guitar neck, you can see now that these are quite important. And because of that, I've put the links down below to tutorials on how to memorize all the note names in 4 easy steps, and also several links to lessons on scales and understanding the key signatures. So, if you really want to understand chord theory, you can go through those lessons in order, and they should be a massive help. As we've used 2 sus chords and an add chord in the previous examples, I'll explain now the difference between the 2 chords, because I can see that question arising in the comments. And also, I've seen these 2 types of chords getting confused quite a lot on the internet. The difference between an add chord and a sus chord. The clue to the difference in these chords starts with the name. So if we look at sus first, this is short for suspended. And this means one of the notes within the chord has been suspended or changed. And that means the chord has fundamentally changed. Whereas add means added. So a note has been added to the chord. And basically the chord structure hasn't changed, it's just had an extra note put in. And to demonstrate this, let's go back to that D chord that we've already taken a look at. So here's the D sus2 and the D sus4. Now the D major chord is made up of 3 notes which are the triad, and they are D, F sharp and A. Now every single major and minor chord are just made up of 3 notes which are the triad. And even if you strum 6 strings, it's still only 3 notes on different octaves. And if you want to understand where those 3 notes or the triad comes from, then link 4 down below in the description will take you to a lesson that explains all the theory behind the major and the minor chord. Again, it's quite important to know for any guitarist. Right, let's get back to our D major, and you'll notice that the notes it's made up of are D, A, D and F sharp, and the triad is D, F sharp, A. Hopefully you'll remember that when we created the D sus2 and the D sus4, we were no longer playing the 2nd fret on the top E string, which was the F sharp. And this is an essential part of the D major chord because it's the 3rd, or it's the middle note in the triad. So with both of these sus chords, the middle note of the triad, which is the 3rd note of the scale, is removed, and this is what makes it a sus chord. And all sus chords are the same, in that the 3rd note of the scale, which is an essential part of the triad, isn't played. But this isn't true of an add chord. So let's take a look at the C we looked at a moment ago, and the C add 9. And the triad for C is C, E and G. And when we strum a full C major chord, we're actually playing C, E, G, C, E. So when you strum a C major, then you're basically playing the complete triad and then 2 notes of the complete triad again. Now, if you look at the notes that make up the C add 9 or the C add 11, you'll notice that you've got a complete triad. So none of the notes from the triad that make up the C major chord are missing. And this means when you've added the extra note, you're leaving the major chord structure intact. And this is why these are called add chords. Now, a couple of other common chord number names you come across are the 7th chords and the 5th chords. And really, these are a subject in their own right. And I have done videos on these, which I'll put the link down below in the description and also into the playlist I'm going to create. However, both of those videos are quite old now, so I'll be redoing those at a higher resolution soon. I'm aware, because it is YouTube and you're not following my structured course, that you might have just come in on this video, in which case this might have blown your brain. So don't worry if you don't understand this. You really need to go through the playlist from the beginning and just learn to play a couple of scales and then understand those scales and understand basic chord theory. Otherwise, this lesson's not going to mean a lot to you. However, I really hope it's been useful to the people who've asked the question, what do the numbers in chords mean? And as an additional bit of help for the people who asked this question, I've made the ebook summary of this lesson available for free on the website www.ebooksforguitar.com, and just click the link to lessons and I'll have a new link up there for chord theory. And somewhere on that page you'll be able to download the PDF. And if you want to see more lessons like this on guitar theory, or lessons on how to play the guitar, or guitar related reviews, please like, subscribe and hit the bell icon. And finally, thank you very much for watching. Every view is very much appreciated and keeps the channel going.